Welcome back to this second video on the Ninja 125 clutch and other unfortunate issues. Earlier I caught up with Luke, who told me a bit about his bike and how he's got on after getting the bike back and already completing 1,500 miles since the clutch was repaired. It's great to keep a new biker on the road, especially when it's their only form of transport, and the dealer costs of this sort of work today are absolutely huge. Let's hear from Luke, and then I'll take you through the steps to reassembling the clutch and addressing what else needed to be done before its first MOT test. Today I'm with Luke with the Ninja 125. Hi Luke, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Oh, great. So tell us a little bit about the background, how you came to have the bike and what went on with the fairing over here.
Well, where do I start? Well, I brought the bike on auction and then it didn't come with a key, so we had to buy an ECU unit and a new ignition barrel and bodged that on, and then it ran straight away basically. So
And then
yeah,
how did this damage happen? Was this after you'd bought it then, or was this before you got it?
That was after I got it. It was in very good condition when I got it. Then I was filtering through traffic and it was a red light, and the car decided to I think he tried to turn around, and I didn't see him pull out until too late, and he didn't see me till too late, and we kind of met in the middle.
So a typical I didn't see you mate event, was it?
Yeah, we kind of just met in the middle. Then I think that went down the road a bit. Then I did a front flip over the handlebars.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've since then, of course, we had the problem with the chain and it jammed up the engine and caused it to start slipping. So we've delved in there in the video and sorted it all out, put a new clutch in. How's it been since that clutch has been put
Felt
in
good, solid, and felt like I can actually get what the bike can do instead of just revving up and not going anywhere.
Okay, and of course we had to do all this because it was coming up to its first MOT in September, wasn't it? And so we did some work on the fairings here that we've covered in the video, we'll be covering in the video. What else did you have to do before it was ready to get that MOT?
Well, I needed to get new indicators, as I saw mine were broken. And as you mentioned, you was worried that I couldn't put new ones on because of these holes were too big and the indicator pushed through. So I came to a conclusion I can get these that kind of just sit on top of it.
And the old indicators were the original type bulbs, whereas these are an LED, aren't they?
Yeah, so it didn't work because of the electric current wasn't, the LEDs wouldn't pull in enough
So they wouldn't
set off
flash
the system.
properly, yeah, because of the resistance.
Yeah, so I had to get a different adjustable LED indicator relay,
Okay.
and then it worked fine.
And you put it in and off you went?
Off I went.
And how did the MOT go?
It's straightforward. I took it in. I think 25 minutes later they called me up saying it was done. No advisories, no nothing. It's all good.
Fantastic. So you're back on the road?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thanks a lot, Luke. There isn't too much dirt on these parts, so I'm just going to give them a clean up with some brake cleaner. I'm starting with the cleanest parts first. I've just got a little paintbrush to agitate any dirt on there. And then just give them a blow off with some compressed air. We're on to reassembly. So first, we put the two shims on. Remember, the thick shim goes on first, then the thin shim, then the first of the friction plates, that's the larger one, and you'll see it fits around the outside of the shims. And so the shims take up that space, which corresponds then with the other friction plates. Next is a metal intermediate plate. We drop that on. And then we want another of the standard friction plates. Followed by another intermediate plate. These intermediate plates seem to have a coating on, so I'm just going to wash that off with a bit of brake cleaner. And blow it off with the compressed air. Before putting it onto the clutch housing. And another intermediate plate. Another friction plate rather. Let's get that right. Another intermediate plate. These seem to be stuck to the plastic with the coating. That one doesn't want to come out. Probably because they're mild steel, it's there to protect the steel. Once we've built up our plates on the clutch hub in the right order, then we are ready to drop the clutch wheel on top and to put it inside the clutch basket. Now you recall when we took this apart, we had this marking at the 10-2 position and then this marking going straight up. So I'm just going to keep that orientation. I'm going to drop the clutch wheel on top and flip it over, and we're going to drop that down into the housing, and the last plate needs to be rotated by about 15 degrees there and fits into that outer part, and that is your completed assembly, ready to go back onto the motorbike. Back at the bike now, I've made sure that there are no bits of any clutch plates left inside the engine. We've also removed and fully cleaned the gauze engine strainer and reinserted that. Quite a few bits of the clutch plates sitting inside there. This mating surface for the gasket is really important that it's scrupulously clean. We're just going to put some brake cleaner on a Scotch-Brite pad and just run round that. And a nicely clean mating surface we've got there now. We're going to reassemble the clutch now onto the main shaft here. Before we do that, we've got to put this little bearing back in. I'm going to dribble some engine oil onto that so there's no metal to metal contact when the engine first starts, because obviously, with having done all this work, there'll be a momentary lapse before the oil pressure builds again in the engine. I'm just going to lubricate that, pop it inside that housing, get our marking at the 10-2 position as we took it off. We've got that marking to go straight up. and the other mark at the 10 to 2. That washer in the right place. Sure. What is stopping that from happening? There we go. Ah, and we're on. That looks good. Right, okay. So now we're ready to reinstall our central clutch mounting bolt. And you'll find all the torque wrench settings at the end of the video at 72 Newton meters. So this is quite a tight bolt. And so again, we're going to need that clutch holding tool and our able assistant to hold it in place while we tighten that up. I'll just go and get the torque wrench. I'm going to set this clutch holding tool in place between these fins. I'm just going to put it on where I think the pressure's going to come there. That's it. Lock it off, and I'm just going to hold it against the frame of the motorbike there, so we should be able to manage this, possibly without a second pair of hands, but we're going to have a look. So this is our torque wrench. This is a Clark's. I'm going to set this to 72 Newton meters. That's 70, and then there's graduated markings 72. 14 mil socket. I'm not sure if I'll need an extension bar. Yes, I think I will. Always the way. Put one of those in with the set. Okay, set it so it's tightening. Gonna first get this tightened up to the point where it stops. There we go, and the clutch holding tool's now against the frame. Need to hold it there. Oh, that's come off. Clearly at this point it looks like I need to call my assistant, and today that is Liam, and we'll go and get Liam to come and help us with the clutch holding tool. Right, so we're going to just lock this in against the turret there, and against the frame. My assistant is going to hold it in place, and then we've got our torque wrench set to 72 Newton meters. Right, that's the hardest part of the job done in reassembly, is getting that torque setting set up correctly. Next are the clutch springs and the release bearing. So we'll put our springs back on top of our turrets. And then if you recall, we've got these bolts that go through the springs. They have to be compressed slightly. There we go, that's me again. A couple of bits of detritus on there. I'm just going to rinse those off. As long as you make sure everything is scrupulously clean as you reassemble it. It doesn't matter if you make the odd mistake. You're going to do that while you're learning. Some of us even do it as we go along. And there's enough clearance now just to marginally compress those springs and get the engagement into the clutch wheel. So this is bolting onto the clutch wheel. At the tension. This is attached to the clutch wheel, and it's this assembly that when the cam inside the clutch housing rotates and presses in, then it pushes the plates away from the cage and stops the driven motion of the vehicle. These clutch spring bolts are only done to 5 Newton meters, so I'm using a very accurate 1/4 inch torque wrench here. 0.8, 0.9, 0.1. That's set to 5 Newton meters, 10mm 1/4" drive socket. And I'm just going to progressively tighten these now, that you can still, obviously as you put the tension on one, it comes off one of the others. We're just going to do it by hand till we get to that point where they're all pretty much tensioned evenly. Right, and now we can just go around and put them to the right torque setting of 5 Newton meters diagonally. Now, of course, the reason they don't need to be any tighter than that is because they're held under spring tension by those springs, so they're not going to come undone anytime soon. Back to our workbench, we're going to take off the old gasket and the outer casing and have a look at this surface here. Again, this needs to be scrupulously clean, so we're going to go back to our Scotch-Brite pad, put some brake cleaner on it. I'm just going to use it to clean up that mating face. You can just see around the edge where corrosion has just crept in from the outside edge, so we're just going to give it a bit of a decent clean up and make sure we got a good surface on both the engine side and the cover side. And I've just got a very fine razor blade here, which I can use to take that off, but be very careful if you do this and you haven't got a very fine blade like this, because what you don't want is to score the mating surface whatsoever. I'm being extremely gentle here. The time you spend cleaning up these casings and gasket faces is time really well spent. As you can see now, I've spent some time removing all of that old gasket and giving it a clean with Scotch-Brite, and that's ready now for the new gasket to seal properly. I'm going to put a bit of engine oil into these bearings, having just washed it all out to make sure that they're all properly lubricated. And we need to drop this little cam. This is the actuating cam for the clutch. I'll put a bit of oil on that and just drop that back in. And that just drops into that center hole there. Okay, and then if I rotate the clutch, you can see that it just pushes up and drops back, so that's ready. The water pump cover, we don't have a new gasket for. That one looks in good condition. but I'm going to just put a very, very fine smear of high temperature silicon gasket sealant just on the outer cover to make sure that that seals again. Okay, again, a little bit of oil. I'm just going to pop on that bearing and this one. Just to make sure everything seals properly. Now we're ready to get this gasket. Go that way. There we go. It only goes one way around. And there's a little metal dowel turret on this side of the case, which positions it. And there's a similar one on the engine casing that stayed in place. And so we'll just offer that up. And once we're back at the bike, and then we can start putting the screws back in. You'll remember we kept in the right places by our piece of cardboard, which we'll have another look at. Back at the bike, I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on these shafts and make it a bit easier just to line everything up, and we're ready for the engine casing. The corresponding dowel for the case is over here. I'll try and get this aligned. You'll recall our piece of card. Thank goodness we did that, given that we've had to wait a little bit of time for the parts. Now this one's got a thread lock on it, so we're going to leave that one for a minute. I'll get some fresh thread lock. Clean those threads and put some on there. Everything's back on and the clutch feels like it's functioning correctly. Just got to fit the impeller on the water pump next. We've put the water pump impeller back on there. 10mm nut, 10mm socket. Just tighten it up to the correct torque setting. You'll have to hold this still with a screwdriver or something just to stop it rotating, but it's not a very high torque setting, so that's fairly straightforward. I've cleaned up the spigots of the corrosion that was on them. There's a little bit more there actually. And that's our last bolt. Confirm we've got none left in our cardboard, and this one goes all the way through the casing and also supports the compression of this cover at those low torque settings. Right, we've just got to go and find ourselves some new copper washers for our oil takeoff hose banjo bolt. We did ask at the Kawasaki dealer, but they didn't seem to have any, which is a bit odd. But in my box of assorted copper washers, I found a couple of suitable sized replacements. They're a bit thicker than the old ones. Shouldn't matter a jot. Just going to slide the one in underneath. Put the banjo bolt in the top. Now that banjo bolt is tightened up hand tight, 12mm socket, 14 Newton meters. Going to get that tightened down. That's just enough to crush these copper washers. There we go. going to replace this oil filter. You can see how dirty that one is. Rubber seal goes to the outside. I'll just clean this up, and we're just going to hook this little rubber O-ring out. I'll need just a little hook to do that, so that we can put the new one in that we've got, and that will make sure that that continues to seal satisfactorily. Get our new O-ring. It goes in that small groove. That's ready to go on. Assembling the oil filter and housing, I'm just going to saturate the filter with a small amount of oil. The reason for doing it, I'm sure it's not entirely necessary, but the reason I'm doing it is that I don't want low oil pressure on the engine because of the gasket, the filter not being moist enough. And we've got to get this rather daft little spring to stay in the center. And there's turrets in here, but it doesn't want to stay. I'm going to try either a bit of oil or even a bit of grease just to get it to stick in place. There we go. And then make sure your two oil ways line up with the oil ways on the housing. Just going to pop this in. At the moment I'm just going to pop the filler cap in, although we need to put tells a litre of oil this engine. Things left to do: reconnect the clutch cable and get it adjusted. We've got to put the exhaust gas sensor back on and plug it in up here, and then fill it up with fluids and give it a go. The clutch cable, then we had a bit of a job with this, you'll remember. Not so bad this time, I'm getting the hang of that. And then at the end we've got to set the clutch free play. Hopefully that's a bit better. Right, okay, so we've got the free play on the clutch cable. We're just going to push it across this way, pull down as much as we can on the lever. I'm almost there. There it is, and that's on. And we just tighten this up. Now these cables are prone to stretching, and so I don't think this one's a problem. Let's see how that feels at the bar. Far too much free play at the moment. Action feels nice and light, and then we can make any final adjustments up at the bar. That's where I'll be going after this for a drink. I'm satisfied the clutch is all working, or seems to be working okay. We'll see a bit later on. We're going to fit the lambda sensor back into the exhaust now. We need a 17mm spanner to do that. I took it off because you don't want to be twisting this wire, and it was just in the way of the housing. It follows a route over this bend up clamp through here and then up to this plug. You just tighten that up. It just needs to be reasonably tight, nothing more than that. And we should have a working injection system and no engine warning lights. Right, we are ready to refill the engine with oil and water. That's pretty much all drained out now, so we're just going to wipe the drain hole and pop the drain bolt back in with the new aluminium crush washer. And as I said, tighten to 29 Newton meters. We've already set our torque wrench to. The engine takes a litre. We're using Castrol Power One 10W40. 4T designates that it's a motorcycle oil that's suitable for wet clutches. We'll basically take the whole of this bottle, particularly as we've drained the engine, We'll just level the bike and see how it's looking in the sight glass. Definitely needs the rest of that bottle. It may be the case that it needs a bit extra with having been comprehensively drained, so we're going to just leave that to settle for a minute. We'll pop the oil fill plug back on for the moment, and then I'll put it back on the stand. In the meantime, we're going to refill the coolant. And today I'm going to use this Prestone ready to use, ready mixed coolant antifreeze. If you make your own up, you can buy concentrate, mix it with distilled water. I find this useful for these small engines. It's suitable for all types of engines, including aluminium. And so I'm going to use up a couple of drops from some old bottles. So I'm going to take the top off the expansion tank, and I'm going to fill the radiator first. Oh. Well, there's a blooper. What have we forgotten to fit? And of course, it's the one little bolt still here, which is the coolant drain plug. We'll pop that back in. So that coolant drain plug, 10mm nut, has got a aluminium crush washer in there, so I'll just make sure it's tight. Very good. This time, hopefully, the antifreeze won't fall back out of the engine once we put it in. We'll fill up the radiator first. Just give it a moment and the air will bubble through, and then just keep topping it up to the neck of the radiator until it doesn't run back down. And then we'll do another check of this after running the engine. Sometimes helps to squeeze the hoses a bit. Radiator cap back on. Now we can top up the tank here. The bike's not level at the moment, but we will check it when it is. You can just see the line there. I'm going to pop the bike back on its stand and double check those settings. Oil wise, hardly seeing anything in the sight window, so we're going to just have to add a little bit extra in there to get it up to halfway. It's just above the minimum at the moment, which isn't quite enough. I haven't got any more Castrol 1, but I've got some really good Motul 7100, 1040, same specification. If anything, I rate Motul oils quite highly because they do seem to have the benefit of additives that improve the gear shift on wet clutch bikes. I'm just putting enough in that I can just wait a second and see, partly from experience really, how much more the engine's likely to need, and it's likely to need a top up anyway. Okay, so that's about 3/4 up the sight glass window. Pop the the filler plug back in and go and find the keys. Give it a start. Right, it does have a bit of an obnoxious short can Black Widow exhaust on, if you're into loud exhaust. Hopefully the video is dulling some of that sound and you can still hear me. It all sounds like it's running sweetly. The engine sounds very quiet. A little bit of smoking going on there. That's just spilled engine oil or water. So we're just going to let it run for a moment. Then we'll turn it off, check everything again, and then we'll take it off the stand and check that the engagement of the gears and the clutch is all okay. I've just run the engine. All seems fine. We've got no oil leaks. Just coming down here to where the oil level is. Sight window, you can see the level that's at, so not quite halfway there. It's still got to run down a bit, but I think I'll be topping that up a little bit. And no oil leaks anywhere, and coolant level seems to be exactly right on the full. So I'm just going to top up that oil, and a little bit more adjustment required on the clutch. It is...
Being human means things go wrong. It's how you react that matters. In this outtake, I spent a whole video segment scratching my head and wondering what I did wrong. If you can spot it, then comment below.
And our marking, which was at 10 to 2, we're going to also maintain. I'm just going to put this onto the base, and it has to mesh with this gear here. And then the center Well, that's it for this episode, a successful clutch change completed. Next time I'll show you how I tackled the fairing damage and the bent clip-ons and the dragging front brake. If you like these videos, you can help me to create more if you like and subscribe below. I always reply to comments, and so let me know what you would like to see. And before we go, here's Sally.